Yeah, I mean, it sounds, first of all, incredibly practical, incredibly hands-on, right? Lots of application there, very specific to a career track towards Wall Street. You know, there's some colleges and universities within degree programs that are doing a little bit about what you're talking about, right? Like I've seen campuses that have, but these are few and far between that have set up kind of like their own little trading floor, and so it's not that this doesn't exist at all, but that's largely not the experience that a student gets if they go off seeking a traditional bachelor's degree. I'm just curious of the students that, well, young adults, I should say, that you're serving. How many of them are in college, post college, not college at all? I'm just curious about that mix in terms of the college going population.
Yes, so overall, the vast majority of our students are college and university undergraduates, particularly as it applies to the first two programs.
Yep.
The third program, um, on purpose, there's a little bit more variety there, just for that reason of beginning to extend the mission to that demographic, just for that one program that may not, for whatever reason, have the traditional Wall Street route does not have appeal, or for whatever reason, but still have the capacity to engage directly with the markets.
Yep.
But for the first two programs that are structured and designed as a journey to Wall Street, I would say 98% are college undergraduates.
Yep.
We do get some recent graduates, and in some of our boot camps, we've had a couple of MBAs here and there. But for the most part, the first two programs are 90 some odd percent college university undergraduates. The third program is starting to lean a little bit against that. There may be some. We just took in a cohort of four just last week, and that's a disparate student body.
Yeah, it's a fascinating point, right? So I'm glad I asked the question, right? Because I wasn't really sure, but again, we're sitting in an environment right now where college has become as expensive as it ever has, right? Tuition is up a good 400 and some percent since the early 80s. Student loan debt has hit 1.6, 1.7 trillion dollars in student loan debt. And there's a big question among a lot of folks about the ROI of those degrees, right? Traditionally, as we know, a bachelor's degree, you make a heck of a lot more money over a lifetime than somebody with a high school only diploma, right? Let's obviously give credit to the college degree for that. But it's just interesting that you've got a program that's essentially supporting college students in a much more specific boot camp way, and the reason is because they're not getting it otherwise on their campuses or through their degree programs, whether those are ground or online. And it's a lot about a few years ago. I wrote an article in Forbes about kind of a made up word, what I called credegrees, right? And the idea of college
Mm,
students getting both a degree and an industry recognized credential as part of it, right? And like
that's right.
these things shouldn't be mutually exclusive, right? Like it's not pure career vocational, skills training or a degree, right? Like why not get broadly educated in the sense of a bachelor's degree or liberal arts experience and leave specifically skilled? And it sounds like that's exactly what you guys are doing. I mean, is that how you've thought about it?
Not necessarily, Brandon, but I'll say this. To your point, the apprenticeship system is live and well in Europe. Particularly Germany, Switzerland,
Yeah.
and some of the other countries where it's the most natural and normal thing. And when you think about it, it didn't really occur to me when started Wall Street Bound 2.5 years ago. But you know, I'm pretty sure nationally the statistic is only 26% of students are graduating within on time with their degrees. I think it's including up to 6 years and even including associates. So to a large degree, you know, Wall Street Bound would not need to exist if colleges and universities were doing what they quote unquote supposed should be doing.
Right. Yeah.
But to a large degree, that's where we come in because I think not only do students appreciate the more experiential approach to learning, and out of the academic setting, for us, instructors, um, it's very important to me to have instructors, A, be representative of our audience,
Yeah.
largely exclusively folks of color, but also have all spent time on Wall Street. And so coming with that also that practical approach, that practical mindset is a difference. And and I can understand. Obviously, there's some tension there. My mother's a grad school professor. Actually, she just retired. And so yeah, there's some natural tension between that world that wants to be focused on publishing and research, but that's not what we're about.
Right.
We're about having these young people be prepared supplementary to what's happening in school, because school is not doing it, particularly because our focus is on those schools, those students that are not the same 13 branded HBCUs and Ivy Leagues where Wall Street is searching.
Right.
My sense is if you're a black or brown student at an Ivy League or top name HBU, you'll probably be okay. But that's not where we're looking, because we know, as I said, in the beginning, in my neighborhood growing up, I knew there were smart kids all around me. But if you have a name that sounds a certain way, you have your hair a certain way in your school, or take it forward to where we are now, no brand school, and on top of that, you don't have certain courses, you
Right.
don't have the practical training as you mentioned, certainly not access to industry recognized certifications as part of your coursework. What other choice is there? And so that's where we step in, because I think the kids and many times the schools themselves recognize we are invited by schools. Wall Street Bound was born at a campus in Brooklyn. The
Yeah.
schools themselves at times, the forward leaning thinkers, recognize this need.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about, what you're ultimately aiming to do. I mean, if we're going to make progress in this as, as a country or an industry, right? We've got to have a lot of different people with a seat at the table, right? Most certainly the firms that are on the hiring side of this, right? And I know there was a story a few years ago about how Goldman Sachs decided to shift from on-campus interviewing at essentially exclusively Ivy League schools, right? And the stories about how they switched to video-based, interviewing process because they wanted to interview at a broader set of more diverse institutions because they were suffering from, not just homogeneous type recruitment, but they were also worried about groupthink, right? Like it just wasn't people who looked alike, it was also people who think alike, and they wanted diversity of thinking, diversity of experiences. Could you just, I mean, obviously without calling out individual firms, I mean, that was a story I remember, reading and thinking, wow, makes sense. You want more diverse talent, you've got to, search with a bigger net, right? In terms of how you do that. What's the progress that we're making in the industry, right? Are the firms really stepping up to the table? I hear lots of statements around we want to recruit more diverse talent. What are you seeing right now?
Brandon, putting me on the spot. I would say the jury's still out.
Yeah.
At a certain base level where I'm mostly working at early career, we're definitely having more conversations. The phone, if you will, is ringing more. Um, but time is out, I would say, because the real test is time and the management ranks of management.
Right.
And ultimately, you know, if I can stand on my soapbox for a second, I would say ultimately, which leans into our longer term vision and goal here, is not only economic participation,
Yeah.
um, but ultimately has to be about ownership. And so until, a lot of firms when they quote statistics on share on ownership, we're quoting all of the civil servants who have shares, let's say within their retirement portfolios. I get that, and that's important.
Right.
I'm talking about direct ownership. And so longer term, it really is yet to be seen how many of the statements, how many of the recruiting efforts, as important as it is to widen the funnel and get them in the door,
Yeah.
how many make it upstairs, how many convert into actual owners. I think that's a longer term tell.
Yeah, that's interesting. Certainly measuring this at a senior leadership level is, where there's, I mean, it's a long-term process, right? Like you can't take a 22-year-old and, produce the kind of results you're talking about in 2 years or 4 years. Like
Yes,
this is a
yes, yeah.
this is a 10, 20, 30, 40 year, type of timeline that I think we all have to be invested in. And but you've made this new point. Like I haven't heard somebody articulate the ownership piece of that specifically. We talk about that with home ownership, right? But you're talking about ownership of the firms that they work for, right? Having a real stake in it, and that is not widely reported. I mean, I think that's a really great push to start to have some visibility and accountability in terms of how much progress we're making. So that's yeah,
I would say, of course, but not even necessary, not even just limited to the firms they work for, just across society, across the
yeah,
economy.
yeah,
That begins a conversation of distribution of wealth, distribution of political power. I mean, you can't separate, and I don't mean to go on a sideways trip on politics and power and history, but just you don't separate wealth from politics.
right,
And so that begins with a basic shift in the mindset. With the students, with my 10-year-old, it's the real shift is not only just that foray into the industry, and then what that leads in terms of access, advanced concepts of financial literacy. But for us and for me, I think the real switch is that investor, that owner mindset,
yeah,
so that ultimately some of these young people turn into job creators,
yep,
not just getting jobs. How do we have this community when they have $100 in their hand? How do we have the next thought be, before buying Nike sneakers, think about buying Nike stock? That's the real shift there.
yep. Yeah, powerful stuff, Troy. I mean, first of all, thanks for the incredible leadership that you're bringing to this, and also for the very kind of thoughtful push around ultimate outcomes and metrics. And obviously, it starts with can we get more of these graduates from your program into an internship program or some sort of apprenticeship like opportunity, ultimately into jobs. But you're right, we got to keep pushing that forward and through the next 10, 20, 30-year type metrics. And so anyway, it's been an honor to have you on the show. Kaplan's delighted to be playing a small role in helping your great work, and we certainly hope that it takes great scale and consequence in the years to come. So thank you, sir. It was great to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I just must give a shout out to Doug and Giggs, who introduced me to the firm. Giggs is a wonderful, wonderful person, and through with Doug's leadership, this program has we're just blessed. We're lucky. We're fortunate to have Kaplan as partners, because that journey begins with accreditation, recognized branding, recognized results. And so I'm glad to be here. And just it takes partnership. I can't do this alone. Wall Street Bound alone cannot lean into 400 years of history. So we take the partners we can, and we make that chain link stronger.
Well, it's certainly been part of our DNA. You go back to the Stanley Kaplan days, 80 plus years ago, and he got denied from medical school because he was Jewish, and so his mission
Mm,
started to get the folks who were left out of these economic opportunities and higher education there. So this is a special partnership for us, and we'll maybe reconvene here in another year or so and do an update session so you can give us some more of the progress. But great to have you. Thank you so much.
that'd be great. Thank you very much.